different than he was before. Better, stronger, faster.
Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, July 2nd, 2015. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5. I am Dan Rubin. If it's Thursday, it can only mean one thing. 24/7 Sports Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, is here to bless us with his knowledge. Steve, how are you this fine morning?
Good morning, Daniel. You always exaggerate the intro for me. I just enjoy coming on here and BSing about the Buckeyes.
There could be no exaggeration in talking about someone of your status, my friend. But let's get started. Yesterday, you had key recruiting story of the day. A certain safety from the Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania area, for that matter, has updated his status. It's caused some crystal ball activity. Bring us up to speed on young Andrew Pryts.
Andrew Pryts told me yesterday that he's coming back to Ohio State for Friday Night Lights. I think that's a big opportunity for the Buckeyes because at this point, that's the only visit that Andrew has planned. And I think Ohio State's a team to beat already, as I have my crystal ball on the Buckeyes. And he's coming back to see how he gels with the players and the recruits. So he wants to get a feel for the personalities that he'll be sharing the locker room with. So I think means from my vantage point in following his recruitment, I think that means that Pryts feels comfortable with the coaching staff in the school, and obviously he's caught up on where they're at as a football program. So now he's coming back to see if he can fit in with the guys. He's also coming off of a knee injury, but he is feeling healthy or getting to that point. And if he feels good enough, he also wants to at least go through some drills with Coach Ash and see what that's like as well. So I think that he's dotting his I's and crossing his T's with Ohio State. Now, could he commit at Friday Night Lights? I mean, he did not say that to me. I think Ohio State's a team to beat, and I'm not sure what's going on. He's very smart. That's one of the smarter kids in the country. Every move he's doing is calculated. He's got a plan. His family, his dad played at Penn State. His dad's been through the process before. So they're everything they're doing has a reason to it, where some kids, they get that first offer and they commit, or it's their dream school and they commit. The school where they're the school for, so they commit. Andrew's obviously going through the process and trying to figure out what's right for him. And I think that Ohio State has the edge right now. If he returns to Notre Dame, then I think you got yourself a ball game right now. But right now, I really like where Ohio State stands. I do think you really like the California schools, Stanford and UCLA. He was extremely complimentary of Tom Bradley, UCLA's defensive coordinator. Not many people have talked about UCLA being a player. And every once in a while, with recruiting, and you go back to the D tackle who committed to Clemson, Christian Wilkins, sometimes a kid picks a school where you're not thinking. And so maybe that could happen here with either the two West Coast schools. But right now, to keep repeating myself because I know people like hearing it, I think Ohio State's the team to beat for this outstanding, hard-hitting safety who's also a really smart kid and a type of guy you want in your locker room.
Speaking of things that Ohio State fans like to hear, you mentioned in there that Pryts is a Penn State alumni. Pryts' dad, played at Penn State. And I know earlier on in the recruiting process, Penn State was thought to be the leader. What changed so that they're not even in the top four anymore?
I really don't know. And maybe they're still under consideration. I listed 5 schools in my article that were still under consideration, and they were one of them. But all the buzz over the last few weeks has been that Ohio State and Notre Dame were out in front and that the West Coast trip could be a potential game changer. But I have not gotten an explanation, or have I really dug in on why Penn State's not as high as the others, and who knows, maybe my intel is completely wrong, but I don't think it is. I think it's an Ohio State-Notre Dame battle, and if anything, I think we could be underscoring Stanford or UCLA. And one more thing on Pryts, obviously one of the reasons why he really likes UCLA as defensive coordinator Tom Bradley, who is a Penn State legend. And so there's no doubt there's a family connection there. And Coach Bradley being at UCLA, maybe that gives them some kind of wrinkle that helps them land Pryts. But again, I think it's Ohio State or Notre Dame. But I just think that it's the West Coast schools that maybe we're underselling a little bit, and I just don't think it's going to be Penn State for whatever reason.
I've been asking everybody this question who covers recruiting for a living when it comes to Ohio State. If you look at their targets, for example, in the class of 2016, go to the drop-down menu. On Bucknuts, get football recruiting targets. It's got everybody listed on there. We do a real good job of keeping these up to speed. So anytime you want to check the temperature on the recruiting class and who they're going after, you can check it out. But if you look at it now, of the guys that are uncommitted, and by uncommitted, I mean we don't know where they're going to go. So I'm throwing Nick Bosa to Ohio State there. Excuse me if I'm a homer. It really looks like the main elite guys are going after now, besides a few receivers, are defensive tackles, three in particular, Rashawn Gary, Rashard Lawrence, and Antoine Jackson. Can you give everybody just a quick idea of what you think of those three guys in general, having seen them in person, and which one you think has the best chance to end up at Ohio State?
Well, there's no question they're all exactly what their ranking says. They're 5 stars. They're phenomenal talent, and they're interested in Ohio State. But beyond that, Rashard Lawrence, I think that he's gonna end up at LSU. Rashawn Gary, I think Ohio State's at the top of maybe the second tier, because I think the first tier is Auburn, Michigan, and Alabama. And Antoine Jackson's been to Auburn 11 times and counting. And I know he had a good visit to Ohio State, and I know there's some buzz there, but I still got to ride with Auburn for him. So we follow up a good question with a depressing question.
You cover the Midwest as well as anybody when it comes to recruiting and the nation for that matter. Yesterday's big national story was about a certain Midwestern coach and Jim Harbaugh and his interview on the Colin Cowherd show. I don't want to go into detail about what went down in the interview. Everyone who frequents Bucknuts has probably heard it. Maybe some of you have it turned into a ringtone. I'm not sure. What did you think of the whole deal, and does that jive with what you've heard about Harbaugh so far, and do you think it has a positive or negative effect on Michigan's recruiting?
I don't think it's going to have an effect at all. I think that, first of all, I hate sports stories like this. I like to think back to when sports was just watching highlights and watching good plays and watching games, and now that's not what people click on anymore. I mean, that Harbaugh story was the most read story in our network yesterday, and then Harbaugh's rebuttal was probably the second most read story. So I understand where we're at. But yes, Harbaugh has a different presence about him in the way he carries himself than Urban Meyer does, or James Franklin, or obviously Mark D'Antonio is different than all those guys in his own way too. But Harbaugh's passionate, and kids see that, and so kids are attracted to playing for passionate people, and his is the way he carries himself. He's obviously a quirky guy, but he's a hell of a football coach. He is a leader of men. You look at what he did with the 49ers with the same roster that they sucked the year before he got there, and he comes into an NFL locker room, and next thing you know, they're a game away from the Super Bowl with the same guys, basically. So that just shows he's a leader of men. People respond to him. Yeah, it's right now he's a lightning rod for news, and every once in a while that it doesn't portray him in the best light, but I don't see this affecting him or Michigan on the recruiting trail. I think that Michigan's going to sign a solid class. I don't know if they'll finish in the top 10, but I think they'll finish in the top 20 for sure. I think that as a football program, they're going to be headed in the right direction, because what they lacked as a program, I think that Harbaugh instantly fixes. Accountability, toughness. They certainly were not a tough football team, especially on offense. And they did play good defense last year, and that's a credit to Madison navigating through all the crap there, because they didn't have a good strength coach. Now they have a new strength coach. They've had a bunch of injuries, which I think also goes back to the strength coach. And then that goes into the huge difference with Ohio State's got Nick Marotti, and they're a tough, hard-nosed football team that, for the most part, is healthy. So Michigan addressed those areas, and they obviously have a huge question mark at quarterback. So They got a lot of guys on the roster. They just need someone to they're not going to win the national championship this year, I don't think so. What they need from the quarterback position is just someone that's going to be able to move the chains and not turn the ball over, which they struggled with. You know, if it was Shane Morris in the game, they couldn't move the chains, and you know, if Devin was in the game, they turned the ball over. So they just need to, if they can address those areas, they got a chance to be a pretty good football team this year, because I do think they have a talented roster. Their problem was toughness, strength and conditioning, and all that goes hand in hand. And Harbaugh fixed that right away, I think. Okay, I want to make a prediction here. There will be at least 2 or 3 viral videos from Harbaugh's reaction to Shane Morris playing quarterback. We appreciate Steve joining us. He'll be back again next week. Steve, we appreciate the knowledge, brother. Have a great weekend. Take care, guys. Have a great holiday.